You're listening to The Scoop on Ultrasound, where the world of ultrasound imaging comes alive through dynamic conversations. This episode is brought to you by EDM Medical Solutions. Today, we're thrilled to have Therese Cooper, Chief Learning Officer of the American Institute of Ultrasound in Medicine. Therese will share her expert insights on ensuring high-quality ultrasound scans, the key challenges in maintaining standards, and the evolving role of AI in the field. This conversation promises to deepen your understanding of ultrasound quality assurance and accreditation.
Quality supplies make a difference. At EDM, our mission is to help you enhance patient care. For over 30 years, we have been a leading supplier of medical imaging products and accessories. It all started with one product, Crystal Ultrasound Gel. And now our catalog includes over 300 products designed to support your practice. From probe covers to needle guides, EDM Medical Solutions is the partner of choice for over 2,000 healthcare facilities in the U.S. Learn about our range of ultrasound solutions on our website by visiting us.edm-imaging.com.
Welcome to a new episode of The Scoop on Ultrasound. Today, we're thrilled to have an insightful conversation with Therese Cooper, Chief Learning Officer of the American Institute of Ultrasound in Medicine. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the pivotal topics of quality assurance and accreditation in ultrasound imaging. Therese is going to be sharing her insights on the critical measures required to ensure that our patients are consistently receive high-quality ultrasound scans. It's a much more complex topic than what we might think on the surface. And so she's also going to be talking to us about the key challenges in maintaining the standards. And she's also going to touch on the evolving role of artificial intelligence in the field, especially AI integration and software. That's something we've already talked about a lot on this show, and it's just something that keeps coming up. In addition to being the AIUM's Chief Learning Officer, Therese is an experienced sonographer herself with 24 years of experience. She spent 13 years in quality assurance and accreditation and 11 years in guideline development. All 13 of those years she has actually spent at the AIUM. So it's needless to say that Therese has seen a whole lot as it relates to ultrasound education and accreditation. So she is the ideal guest for this topic. Thank you for joining us today, Therese.
Thank you for having me.
So before we go into the details of accreditation, which is, of course, an important topic, and I know some people might be like, why are we going to talk about that? But it's critical, and I'm sure you're gonna tell us more on why it is. Maybe we could start by bringing our listeners in on the challenges related to patient care in ultrasound imaging. In your opinion, what are some of the key challenges today to ensuring patients receive high-quality ultrasound imaging?
The number one, I think, is actually the difference in expertise among ultrasound users. I think that there are people in the country who don't have access to ultrasound, and so patients who live closer to major cities have an advantage there. There's differences in ultrasound machines, so that can be a challenge, and the people can't afford necessarily the high-end machines. You have to know those machine limitations. And so when you don't have the finances perhaps to be able to buy the big fancy machine and you do something smaller like a handheld device, you do have to know the limitations and whether or not you get the best diagnostic image for what you have in your hand. It takes time, to develop using ultrasound, and you need to spend the time to learn it and to use it in your practice. And sometimes it actually is limiting when you don't get enough time to use it, and you're getting pushed to see more patients because they're trying to make money, and it can be exhausting. And I think that there's some musculoskeletal injuries that you can get because you're trying to take shortcuts based on trying to not move the patient in the best position because you're trying to be quick about it. So I think time. The time factor, has a lot of challenges in it within itself because you end up, overcompensating, rushing, and those types of things because you feel like there's a big need to get things done. When you take these shortcuts, you're putting yourself at risk, which is why the quality assurance program is so important. Which, if you don't put it together, you can really make mistakes, and you don't get to learn from your mistakes if you're not putting together a good quality assurance program. So, and I think finally, the probably the thing that most people don't always address, or maybe they address it, but it's apparent that body type does make a difference for ultrasound imaging. And I think that whether weight is a factor, sometimes you can be thin and you have a long rib cage and it still is a factor. So I think that those are probably the most important challenges.
That makes sense. Now, you touched on something that I wanted to follow up on, and that was the difference in the machinery, because, of course, point of care ultrasound is very popular now, right? But what do you think is the challenge right now with point of care? Do you think that it's good, obviously, that it's expanded access, right? But do you think that it has achieved at this point the idea of being able to bring ultrasound to people who are too far, or have we not really gotten there yet? Right? Because I've heard this before, that point of care is good, but we still need a higher frequency machine. We still have to take them to a maybe a bigger center or a place that has a bigger machine, right? What are your thoughts on that and how it's been developing?
I think that handheld ultrasounds they've come a long way, and I think that they are actually they can do a lot, and I think that you just have to know the limitations. So you can't shy away from the fact that, like you said, you have to go and get a better machine and go deeper. I think handheld ultrasound, you're answering a question. You're not trying to do, everything on the patient all at once. You're targeting, whether it's a symptom that you're trying to get to the bottom of. So I do think that I don't think people need to shy away from it. I think it needs to be something that gets bigger and better as a tool. But I do think that the training is probably the most important. Is just you have to learn ultrasound, and you have to be good at it. You can't just pick up a handheld ultrasound and think that you know what you're doing.
Right. And we'll get more into that, but I think that's also the risk with ultrasound's increasing popularity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, shifting a little bit now to AI, which, like I said, on this show, we've talked a lot about it. I think it's unavoidable. You read about it everywhere. And medical imaging as a whole, radiology, obviously is being impacted by it in a positive way, maybe to some people in a negative way. That's a debate in and of itself. But how do you think that ultrasound organizations and also ultrasound education programs can keep up with the AI revolution we're witnessing? Because obviously things are moving fast, at least companies are. But what would you say to organizations that maybe they just feel like it's moving faster than them, and schools as well? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think they need to embrace it. I think if AI is in their machine, they should really learn to use it and get the hands-on training that it takes to be able to use it to their advantage. I think that education programs, though, is much harder maybe to get newer equipment with the access to AI. I think that if they can, if they don't have the budget, I think that they need to create opportunities, and I think AIUM can be one of those organizations that can create those opportunities to learn the skill of the various machines that have that capability. I think they need to embrace it, but I understand that there's some challenges getting access to it.
And exactly, that's the thing. And at this point, from your point of view, obviously as the chief learning officer, you're always talking about education. So from your point of view, do you feel like most sonographers have been open to the idea, or do you think that there's still a substantial segment that you feel it's like, okay, we need some convincing here, there's a hesitation? What do you feel is like the temperature right now, as it relates to that? Because I know that the sentiment has kind of gone evolving.
Yeah, I do think sonographers need to embrace it, and maybe not just sonographers. I think that there's more than just sonographer users out there in the
Exactly.
medical practices. But from a sonographer standpoint, I do think that they need to embrace it and not be afraid of it. I think no matter what, you're going to need that human component. And I don't think that it's going to take away their ability to do the job of ultrasound. But I do think if you embrace it and you use it to your advantage, I think that there will be easier for you on your day. I think that there's a lot of good capabilities already, and I think that workflow can be streamlined. So, but no matter what, I think you're going to need that
human aspect, right?
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
I feel is kind of like the fear, right? In
Yeah,
general with AI, it's not unique to ultrasound, of course. It's like, oh, am I going to be replaced? And I think that the answer is no. I think we definitely
yeah.
still need sonographers, and like you said, there's other ultrasound users. We have physicians, of course, who know how to use ultrasound, are certified, and it could also be a benefit to them. It's just something that I think can really speed it up. If you are high-level disinfecting your ultrasound transducer, it's likely you're soaking the probe or using an automated HLD device. But there's a better option out there. TriStel Ult can high-level disinfect your transducer in just 2 minutes and costs under $3 per cycle. Sound too good to be true? Request a brochure today and learn why so many practices are switching over to TriStel Ult. Visit us.edm-imaging.com/TriStel. That's TRISTEL. And now, back to the show. Moving on now to accreditation itself. We know that the AIUM does a whole lot now within the ultrasound community, one of those being accreditation. So could you provide listeners an overview of what the AIUM ultrasound practice accreditation entails, and really maybe new things that the AIUM has been developing or working on related to accreditation that you really like to share that maybe a lot of listeners just haven't heard about yet?
Yeah, I mean, accreditation is not, the process of it isn't going to change much in the sense that you're going to, in simple terms, you have an online application, you're going to answer a bunch of questions about your practice, policies, procedures, safety, which is of course very important, and including infection control. And you're going to have to enter in, the users that are in your practice, and their training. Case studies, of course, are super important because that's kind of the bread and butter, right? You're getting assessed based on the skill of ultrasound. We provide them feedback, the practice's feedback, education, and then if they have to resubmit, we review that, and then once everything is cleared, they get accredited. So that's like in a nutshell, what's kind of the process of accreditation.
So is there anything new? So right, the process is the same, but has there been anything new that AIM has been developing, maybe related around something around accreditation or quality assurance that you'd like to share that maybe people aren't that familiar with?
Yeah, we're trying to get a more robust document together to help with quality assurance. I think that there's some confusion of really what, how much to do, what to do, and where to start. I think some people that don't have a quality assurance practice, a robust one at least, they don't really know where to start. So when they come for accreditation for the first time and we request a quality assurance program and want them to describe it, I think that they don't really know how to answer those questions, and then they look to us to say, okay, well, what does that look like? And I think that we're really trying to almost get together and get a packet together that really says, okay, if you follow these rules, if you will, then you can do a lot better with your quality assurance program. So that's kind of in the works. And another thing that we've been really striving to get better at on our end as well as, and I think just to help the practices, is try to get some more mentorship from the AIUM to really help guide and train people in a better way, and then push them to seek accreditation. And because, right now it's somewhat voluntary, but also somewhat mandated. So
Makes sense. Super cool stuff. Now, what would you say are the primary benefits for a practice that achieves the AIUM accreditation? Because maybe some practices really don't understand exactly why to get it. I mean, if it's mandatory, I understand, but let's say it's optional. It's like, well, do I need it? So could you tell us what really are those key benefits that make it make sense?
Yeah. So, a lot of it has to do with, being better than another practice, I think. If it's not mandated, then you're going to try to kind of beat out the that your competition. And I think improving your ultrasound practice is going to help that. It's going to, get the word out there to patients. Patients should care about where they go to get ultrasounds. So it's going to, show them that you exhibit your commitment to clinical excellence and high quality patient care. And I think it's credibility. I think that that's kind of the, when it comes to you're trying to get more patients to come to you because you're the best, then I think displaying that and providing that credibility to your peers and patients, I think is kind of the bread and butter. And I think that you should care about achieving AIUM accreditation or any other accreditation that fits the need of your practice. But AIUM is obviously the one that I would go with.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, it's like a seal of excellence, right? Is that what we could say,
Exactly.
right? It's an assurance, and it definitely is very important, I think, for practices that want to do right by their patients to always be seeking to show that their standards of care are excellent. And I think a lot of practices, or most practices, we could say confidently that that's what they desire for sure. Now, let's say I get accredited as a practice. How is it that the AIUM ensures that those accredited practices maintain high standards over time? So could you walk us through sort of what the process is? How long does it last? What do I have to do to keep it? Things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-year cycle. We do evaluate the case studies so that, in our cells, we ensure that you're actually performing the ultrasounds in high quality exams. But, and that your quality assurance is kind of what we expect you to be doing to be able to learn from mistakes or try not to make them. But I think that it's one of those things where we'd probably like to do better as well from, touch points without making it onerous for a practice. Like they're busy. We're not the police though. And so you have to take care of making sure that you are the one that cares about your accreditation and that you keep the quality up to high standards. So the thing that we have seen is that, you maintain the high standard on the day of your application and the day that you get accredited, and then you kind of forget to do things that you said you would do. And then over time, recreate the same mistakes again. So we'd like to find a way to kind of bridge that gap and say, okay, when you have turnover, how can you onboard your new people with the same information that you got from the accreditation so that there's no gaps in learning. Right. So I think that's probably one of the challenges, but I do think that the practices have to care in order to, we can't ensure anything. The practice really has to care about their standards.
That makes sense. Yes, it's definitely a two-way street, right? So now going back to the topic of AI, but understanding that, this is very much so tied to quality assurance. Do you think that there's a risk of decreased quality if we rely on or just integrate new AI software? Because I think that that's a concern, right? A lot of people have raised the concern of, well, if we start integrating AI, of course, here we're talking about ultrasound, but for other modalities as well, if we start integrating AI into medical imaging and we rely too much on it, isn't this a risk to the patient care, to the quality of the care, to quality assurance? Obviously, in most places, of course, in the US, AI softwares have to pass certain quality trials. It's not just like, free for all. Regardless of that, there's still some people who are concerned. So what are your thoughts on that, and how can we avoid that ever becoming the case?
Yeah, so of course it could happen if we become too dependent on AI, right? We need to use that human critical thinking skill. We need to check the AI's accuracy. It's like anything that's new. So right now, I think that AI should probably be used in adjunct. It shouldn't really be relied upon to the new users. And I think that gradual implementation of it should be maybe a good approach. I'm no expert, of course. So when it comes to the AI piece, I that's based on a quality assurance kind of mentality and gradual implementation to try to check checks and balances. You don't want to be dependent upon it. I think that we have to help clinicians adapt to it and help them have time to monitor their own performance, using the quality assurance program to be really assessing their reliance on AI. So, yeah,
Right.
learn and adapt.
Right. I mean, yeah, that honestly, I think it is where we're at, right? It's so new that we're still seeing how to use it. But it's sort of, I think what you said is the general consensus, right? To not rely too much on it, and also to make sure there are checks and balances.
Right.
That's so important. And if one day we would reach a point where we trust it more, so be it. But I don't think we're really quite there yet. I think we definitely still need a lot of the checks and balances. So we'll see how it goes. But there's definitely the benefits that you said. The workflow efficiency is a really big one.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that's something for different regulatory bodies to go deciding very carefully. You know. Now, as an educator, what would you say are your key pieces of advice to sonographers and even physicians using ultrasound who already have the experience, but they want to continue learning and evolving with the profession? So, say ultrasound users who've been doing this for many years, let's say even more than 10 years, and now you have new things like AI and just the evolving technology of ultrasound imaging outside of AI. And they're like, well, how do I keep up? What would you tell them from your role as an educator that they need to keep doing so that they don't, feel like they stay behind?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say regularly participating in workshops, conferences, any online education, lectures, webinars, and of course anything to kind of get the latest, techniques. Maybe getting some hands-on that is in a new area, just to kind of learn with the times, I guess. Even
Right.
with AI that we were just talking about, if that's something that's coming around, don't stay back and not learn it. Let's go for that experience. If there's a certificate of completion of some kind, even better, right? Because you have that paper that says that you finished this particular assessment or competency, this program. Mentors, I think, is great. Professional network. There's always, journals, ultrasound journals, specifically ultrasound journals. You gain some insight about the research that's in your area. And maybe last, I would say maybe something like reviewing other case studies from other people. I think that is probably one way to learn. I think people love just images to see, what is it that you've diagnosed or what have you
Right.
seen that I may not have seen. And I think if you set up a good quality assurance program at your practice and maybe network with other people, you'll get that extra level of involvement and experience.
For sure. The opportunities are there, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely, I know that through organizations such as the AIUM, there's a lot of opportunities for ultrasound users to participate in workshops like the ones you just said, and conferences, and different sort of activities where you can learn more and also gain community, right? Really be involved in the community. That's the best way, probably, I would say, is learning from your peers, right? Afterward, we
Absolutely.
already got the book knowledge. Now it's the experience and also learning from others. I've heard that a lot from other clinicians, and
Right.
it's very much so true. Yes. Well, this has been a really great conversation, Therese. Thank you very much again for taking of your time to really talk to us about quality assurance, accreditation, AI, and just really hearing about how we can set and maintain that standard of high quality patient care, which really should be at the heart of the mission of every practitioner. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Scoop on Ultrasound. Subscribe today to be notified when new episodes are released, and visit our website, us.edm-imaging.com, to learn more about who we are and what we do.